How's it going, everybody? Mr. Barber here. I hope you are doing well. It's been a while since we've done some reading. I've been a little busy, as you can tell, getting some crazy quarantine haircuts, homegrown type stuff. Hope you guys are doing well. And we're gonna jump in with chapter 16. We're gonna read a couple chapters today in one video. We left off with chapter 15, 6th grade, first days of school. Delphine's got a new teacher, and now we're jumping into the next chapter. The subject was Zambia. Usually the teacher played a name game on the first day of class, or she made name cards for our desks. Mr. Mwila placed a sheet on Rukia's desk. He told her to write her name in the first row, first column, then pass the sheet to the person behind her. I waited for the sheet to reach my desk. There were only 2 male teachers in our entire elementary school, and none of us expected to have one until junior high school. I couldn't see why we needed a male teacher. Male teachers were for classrooms with rough and rowdy boys who needed a firm hand to keep them in line. The boys in our class were bigger pests than they were rough and rowdy. Last year, Miss Peterson kept them in line easily with her pine board of election. Mr. Mwila didn't carry a big pine board. There was something about his voice that made the boys in our class straighten up and sit taller. Except for Ellis Carter, the sloucher. He looked to Lucy and said, "Miss Lucy Riley," she said, happy to be called on. He nodded. "Lucy Riley, you asked about Miss Honeywell. Now I'll answer. Have you heard of exchange students?" "Yes," Lucy answered. "When a student from here, the U.S., switches places with a student from another country." Mr. Mwila clapped his hands once. I couldn't have said it any better. Lucy blew on her nails and dusted her collar. Your Miss Honeywell and I have switched places," he said. "We're exchange teachers. She's in my country, Zambia, and I'm here with you." Sounds of amazement spread across the room. Miss Honeywell was in Zambia, sharing her fun projects with students who didn't know how lucky they were. It wasn't fair. "It is only for a year," he said. "I'm excited about this opportunity, but I'll be glad to see my wife and children this time next year." Then Mr. Mwila finally gave us a real smile, as if he was embarrassed or had said more than he meant to. He crossed to the center of the room and pulled the map of the world down over the blackboard. He grabbed the long wooden pointer from the chalk ledge and aimed it at an area that looked like a bitten into golden pear named near the middle southern part of Africa. "This is my country, Zambia. 4 years ago at the Olympics, our athletes went to France and northern Rhodesians while a revolution was underway in our country. By the end of the Olympic Games, those same athletes left the stadium with a new flag and a new name, Zambia." He said revolution on the first day of class, just like Sister Makumba had taught us about revolution and spinning and changing on our first day at the People's Center. But he didn't ask us if we knew the meaning of revolution, so I couldn't raise my hand and define it for the class. It was as if he expected us to know the meaning, along with other words he used like decorum. Instead of asking us how we spent our summer, he told us more about his country. He answered questions about mining and silly Tarzan questions about witch doctors and wild animals. While things were going well, he said, "Now class, suppose Zambia was the main subject of a report." We all groaned. Our new teacher expected us to think about writing reports while Miss Honeywell's new class was making papier-mâché volcanoes with bicarbonate lava. What could some of the minor topics be of our report? I will give you a hint. I spoke of at least 5 subtopics. Who can name a subtopic? Mr. Mwila's eyes shone brightly at us. He expected 24 hands to shoot up, but not one hand rose. Not even Rukia's or Michael Sandler's. We thought we were learning about the place where Mr. Honeywell was, not preparing to write a report on a country we hadn't heard of before Mr. Mwila brought us up to our classroom. The room was silent. Come, grade 6, Mr. Mwila said. You know these subtopics. Jump in, name one. Rukia raised her hand. Mr. Mwila glanced down at his classroom sheet and said, Rukia. He said it with the same teeth-baring smile he used to say his own name. Can one of the subjects be the early settlers of Zambia? Indeed it can, Mr. Mwila said. Early settlers in Zambia. Who else will we hear from? He searched the room for another raised hand, but everyone kept their hands down, and Rukia knew better than to raise hers again. Ah, he said. He pulled the mat back up, took a piece of chalk, and made 2 horizontal lines on the board. A vertical line went under the horizontal line, and on the right side of the board, girls' team, 1 point. I knew what he was doing. The Black Panthers warned us about this in summer camp. Divide and conquer. Separate the people and make one side think they are different or better than the other. But girls were better than boys. Mr. Mwila's plan worked. Hands shot up on the boys' side, starting with the Jameses, Enrique, Anthony, but not Ant, Upton, and Michael Sandler, the smartest of the 3 Michaels. Then Ellis Carter raised his hands to show boy team solidarity, although he sat on our side. It was a wonder Miss Peterson had promoted him to the 6th grade with the rest of us. Ellis did his homework and passed his quizzes fine, but call on him to speak and you could barely hear his voice, except when he sang that stupid dolphin song at me. I put an end to that dolphin singing. Ellis Carter. Ellis, who was caramel red to begin with, got a little redder. He stamped his foot. Come, the boys have yet to score a point. Ellis mumbled. Forgot what I was gonna say. Girls, Mr. Mwila said. The choruses of James's, Michael's, Anthony's, and the rest told Ellis he stunk now that he was such a girl. What about our turn? Michael Sandler asked Mr. Mwila. Your representative has spoken, Mr. Mwila said. In your football terms, he punted. We girls didn't really know football terms, American or any other kind, but we understood our teacher. Then all of us girls raised our hands. My subject was going to be political change and revolution. I couldn't wait to say exactly that. Frida, Mr. Mwila said. Is another subject foot? She stopped in the middle of her thought. Is another subject the national pastimes in Zambia? After all, Mr. Mwila spoke of more activities than football, and Frida must have figured out how a list of activities made one subject. Mr. Mwila made another tally under girls, and we began to cheer. Ellis put his head down on his desk. Boys, Mr. Mwila said, there's still an opportunity for redemption. The boys shouted, redemption! When I knew half of them didn't know what redemption meant. If you correctly supply another subtopic, you'll be rewarded with a bonus point and you'll be equal to the girls. The girls' team called out that it was unfair to give the boys a bonus point. Mr. Mwila only said, decorum, and the boys laughed. Who will take up the call for the dignity and redemption of the boys? The girls booed, but the boys waved their arms like flags. Then Michael Sandler called out to his side like a football coach. Only if you know the answer, and half the boys lowered their flags. Well then, Mr. Mwila said, perhaps you'd like to supply another subject for the point and the bonus point. You are Michael Sandler? That's my name, said Michael. Mr. Michael Sandler, Mr. Mwila said. Lucy grinned. Michael cleared his throat. A subtopic to a report about Zambia is, what are the chief exports of Zambia? His answer sounded so right, and he said it like Huey Newton addressing the masses. The boys cheered, Mr. Wheeler raised his hands, and we immediately got quiet. Lucy turned to me and winked. Didn't she know that Michael S. liked Evelyn Alvarez? Michael Sandler, he said. I didn't say export, and yet you used the term, the right term. You have earned the point and the bonus, and the boys are now equal to the girls. The boys cheered, but Michael Sandler didn't join in because he caught Mr. Wheeler's joke. But then the joke was on us. We spent the next period writing paragraphs about Zambia, choosing one minor subject. I didn't want to be the class goody, but I couldn't help myself. At the end of our first day, I told Mr. Wheeler, my mother's name is from Africa. He smiled and said, Miss, he didn't have his name sheet and hadn't learned my name. Delphine Gaither. Yes, Delphine. Another smile. His eyes were kind. What country is your mother from? I was a little confused, but answered, America. I see, Mr. Wheeler said, although I wasn't sure what he could see. I couldn't remember the country she'd said her name was from, but I knew it was the land of our ancestors. I knew it sounded like Aruba, but I didn't think that was right. I gave the only answer I could give with certainty. Her name is Zillah. And when I said it, I smiled without meaning to. Ah, said Mr. Wheeler, recognizing the name instantly. Your mother was born on the road. It must be a fascinating story. I looked at him strangely. I didn't know what to say. The hospital is far if you live on the outskirts, so many children are born on the way. Then Zillah is also popular if your parents travel. Some stories about the name are funnier than others. I was still stunned and asked, doesn't it mean blowing away the dust from the surface? Or something about truth? Mr. Wheeler said, is that what your mother said? There I was, nodding, because I couldn't speak. That was what I deserved for throwing myself and my mother on display like Vanetta would. All it got me was a mother who lied about what her stupid poet name meant. Big Ma and Pa were right to keep Cecil from naming Fern any Ooga Mooga names. Dear Cecil, now Delphine's writing. Dear Cecil, how are you? I am not fine. My new teacher is Mr. Wheeler from Zambia in southern Africa. Mr. Wheeler told me the truth about Zillah. When I told him your African name, he said Zillah means born on the road. It does not come from Aruba, the land of our ancestors. It comes from Zambia. It has nothing to do with the truth. It isn't fair to tell us your name means blowing the dust off of our surfaces when it means born on the road. At least I know better. Sincerely, Delphine. And that is the end of chapter 16. So Delphine shared that. She's trying to figure out what the truth is. And I'm wondering what you think. Why do you think Delphine is so upset that she feels like her mom told her something? I mean, obviously anybody would be upset if someone told us something they thought wasn't true. But Delphine learns a different interpretation of her mother's name, and she seems really upset by it. I wonder why you think that is. The next chapter, chapter 17, Your Mother, Zillah. It took no time at all for me to turn against my mother when I had scolded Vanetta and Fern for wanting to be flower girls at Paul's wedding to another woman. My letter yelled at my mother. It said she didn't tell us the truth about her name. That was the same thing as calling my own mother a liar. I thought Cecil would send a letter to Vanetta or to Fern and no letter to me. The next week, her letter came addressed to me, airmail. Dear Delphine, I am a human being, a black human being, a female, a woman, a poet. That is the order I came into the world. I see as only I can see things, as only a poet would see things. Words do more, mean more than how they are defined. I see things visibly, invisibly, ordinary, and extraordinarily in the world. If a child born on the road is named Zillah, then I can call myself that. If that child grows into a girl who sleeps out in the street, then that is who I am. My name is growing up with me. As I am defined, then my name is defined and shaped around me like clothing. If that woman finds her road hard but full of meaning that she makes sense of and sees clearly through the lines of poetry, then she can say she has found truth. She blows dust off the surface of a clouded path. She can call herself that. One day you'll see the truth in things. Until then, study hard. Your mother, Zillah. P.S. You are not grown. Be who you are. 11. That's the end of chapter 17. So we got Delphine's questioning of her mom. And Delphine says, I was yelling at my mom on that letter. And then Zillah's response. I'm going to end it here. I'm going to let you think about that exchange between Delphine and her mom. I encourage you to go back and re-listen or re-watch those parts just to give it some thought. I will talk to you guys soon. Be safe, be well, all right? Bye.